part. And Furedi has been Chief Executive of the British Pregnancy Advisory Service since 2003, and she's been very active in the pro-choice movement and has chaired the Voice for Choice Coalition. So thank you, Alan.
Thank you very much for thank you very much for that. Thank you very much for inviting me here to speak. And thank you, Evelyn, for the kind comments that you made about the BPAS staff, which I'll feed back to them. I have to say, I'm enormously proud of the service the British Pregnancy Advisory Service is able to offer to women. And I think that we have to remember sometimes that we talk about the stigma that women who have abortions face. And actually, you know, the nurses and the counsellors and the doctors on the front line of providing abortion face stigma too. It always strikes me that I know a number of doctors who work in infertility, and when you go to a dinner party and you work in infertility, you can brag about all those babies that you helped to create, you know. When you work in an abortion service, you never quite know how people are going to feel about you bragging about your job. So it's it can be quite a difficult area. So I'm proud of the service that BPAS provides, but I know it's not a good enough service. It's not a good enough service for women in Ireland, because you will never have a good enough service until you have a service for which you do not have to travel. You don't have to travel to Britain or anywhere else, and you have a service that respects the dignity and choice that women need to exercise. And you won't have a good enough service until people understand why that service is necessary. I think that is crucially important. It sits behind it. Colleagues have said just before me that what we need laws, and we need the medical techniques, the medications, and the clinics that will provide the surgical interventions that we need. We need all of that, but in some ways those aren't so difficult to provide once you have an understanding that women need abortion services. And one of the things that I think really gets in the way at the moment is a notion that if only women were more responsible, if we behaved ourselves better, if we planned more, if we were more organised, if we were more educated, if we were more generally sussed about our lives, then somehow we would not need abortion. So basically, if women just got their shit together, everything would be all right, and we wouldn't need to deal with these difficult and uncomfortable issues. And of course, it's not the case, is it? You know, Sally just made the point that Ireland now is a modern society. For heaven's sake, you know, Ireland is up there as a modern democratic society, and modern Ireland needs women as much as women need to live in a modern democratic society. It needs us as half of the population to be able to work, to be involved in politics, to be educated, to be all of those things. It needs us to be citizens, to be involved in public life. And yet, to be able to do that, we do need to be able to control our lives. And controlling our fertility, controlling when we have children, if we have children, is an absolute essential part of that. You know, we realised that way back in the early days of the feminist movement, when we were meeting and talking about consciousness raising back in the 1970s. We saw that women's liberation relied on our ability to have control over our fertility, and that required free and safe contraception and abortion when we needed it. We knew that we needed all of those things to be able to do it. And yet we've discovered since, in those countries where contraception is available freely, available on demand, Britain is a very good example of that. We're a bit ahead of you in the fact that we have it on our National Health Service, and so no one pays for contraceptive services in the UK. But contraception is not good enough to be able to regulate our fertility, however good we are at using it. Contraception lets us down. Contraception fails even if we do not fail to use it correctly. So we have to remember that control over our fertility requires abortion to be there as a backup to the other method of family planning that we use. It's a backup to the rest of our birth control. And it's also not good enough to understand that abortion is required early in pregnancy for us to make those birth controlling decisions. Abortion is also necessary later on in pregnancy, when the kind of remedies that Sally was talking about that we might be able to fix up in our kitchens one day in the world looking forward to the future can deliver. Later abortions are necessary too. They're necessary because life isn't static for all of us. Things change in our lives. Things change in our pregnancies. We need to be able to review those decisions. We need to be able to sometimes have those abortions that are necessary later on. Because we need to be able to have that control if we are, as women, to act as adult people and to take responsibility and to take control over the situations that we have created. And the decision to end a pregnancy can be part of that. I'm wearing a badge that I picked up at the back of the conference, having put the donation in your little box I quickly add, that says, I'm pro-choice. And the reason why I'm pro-choice is because I feel very strongly that when it comes to abortion, or when it comes to having a child, a woman should be in the position to be able to make that decision for herself. We are capable of making those decisions. We want to take responsibility for those decisions, and that choice should be ours. And that's what women need. Women need no more and we need no less than to be treated like adult people with control over our bodies and responsibility for our lives. That is what we truly need. Now, I would say that women around the world can look to you because there's something else that we need as well. And we need inspiration. We need to know that we can take up a fight, and sometimes we can look beyond the barriers that people place in our way. And I think that Ireland stands at the moment, the Republic of Ireland in particular at the moment, really stands as an example to those of us who are campaigning elsewhere. In the UK at the moment, BPAS is looking to launch a campaign for the decriminalisation of abortion. We abide by the current law, but we think that the law should have no part to play in these choices that are made by women. And we also face the position of our leaders telling us that, well, you can't talk about that kind of reform because we don't know what the detail of it means. Well, I think there's one simple answer when your Taoiseach or where our leaders say to us that we can't move on with a referendum and we can't move on with a change of law because we don't know what it means. And the one thing that we can say is that the one thing that we do know is that there is nothing that the criminal law can do in relation to abortion except make things worse. And when you get rid of the Eighth Amendment, you have the potential to really have that discussion about what kind of a medical legal framework abortion needs. And you are possibly going to be the first country that will be in that situation where that choice can really be made. So the decision is really going to be yours. The choice will be yours about how you take this campaign forward. And I think the reproductive choices of the rest of us will depend on what we can draw from the decisions that you make. So thanks for inviting me.